Hi, all. Boy, what a day. I apologize. I've been on the phone. I know I'm a few minutes late. I don't know if we're live or not because the little wheel spins, even though it says live, and then all of a sudden it says you're live. So either I did this in good timing or it kind of got screwed up and you got caught. You came in on half of a sentence for me. Anyway, wow. You know what was really funny is I had, if any of you have been on my personal wall and saw that I made a post about the El Rancho Hotel in Gallup being where I grew up in, and that they had, they were on the news, Ghost Adventures or whatever, one of those shows said, oh my God, there's ghosts in the El Rancho. And I laugh because I grew up in that hotel. I literally grew up in that hotel. My dad walked in as the manager when I was, 8. And the funny thing about that was that my grandfather, and long story short, was one of the initial investors when the El Rancho was built back in the 30s. It was a corporation that owned it, Indian Skies Corporation, a bunch of Italians. So, so my dad kind of went in as the manager. I met Ronald Reagan when he was a Bad B actor, and Brian Keith and John Wayne, and I was a little kid. So, I know I'm digressing, but there's a reason for me to be telling you this. So I made the remark, and a few of you guys from Gallup, thank God for you guys, because nobody can understand Gallup unless they've been there, done that. People kind of go through and they don't quite get it. I wanted to talk about a little bit about what the difference is between hauntings, residual energy, and the dead. Okay, and it kind of is timely because we have a lot of people that have transitioned this year, probably more than normal. I venture to say a lot of people don't believe COVID's a real thing, and that's okay because they think only a few people die. I think 250,000 people dying is a lot all at once. But we all check out the way we check out. Anyway, again, I digress. This isn't meant to be a judgment thing. This is my opinion piece. Because, you know, Swanda, she's kind of bitchy and she has opinions. And I'm going to digress again. When I was a little kid, I was about 3, 4-ish. And I remember this vividly. I didn't want to take a nap. And every afternoon, my mom took a nap. She had 4 girls. I was the youngest. And she did all the housework herself. You know, there was no maid. There was no anybody to help her out. But she took a nap. She watched the Dialing for Dollars movie and fell asleep. Okay, I don't know if any of y'all are old enough to remember the Dialing for Dollars. And I didn't want to go to bed. I snuck into her room and I was watching the movie and she totally busted me. She whipped me. You go to bed. And again, I got up and out of bed. She was a little irritated, and I looked at her and I said, you know what? You're not my boss. I don't live here. I live somewhere else. So even as a little kid, I had to probably be about 4 to really articulate that much. She again busted my butt and stuck me in bed to prove to me she was the boss. And I remember seeing these entities. I'm at home, so Max is going to come visit us. He's pestering me, so we're going to do story time with Max. Keep your tongue in your mouth. So anyway, going through my life, I used to perceive things that got me in a lot of trouble if I made comments about it. My grandmother's house was in downtown Gallup. On Aztec. Her address was 208 Aztec, and it was right next to the Merchants Bank. It was a big pink double-story house. she lived there until she died. She wasn't like her friends who moved up on the hill into the better neighborhoods or anything. That was the house that she lived in because she gave birth to her kids there, and she died in that house. But I went to go live with her when I was 14. And it was funny because I had a dream that my grandfather came to me. He said, I'm leaving now, and you're going to live with your grandmother, so take care of her, and I'll check in on you. I woke up, I looked at the clock, and the clock said 3:35, and his estimated time of death was 3:30. Coincidence? I don't think so. And I did. I went to go live with her. It used to really creep me out in her house because in her basement, I could hear talking. And in her basement was where they had it all set up for the laundry, and they had it all set up for, it was like a little bar where they could eat, have a few drinks, and their friends all, played cards, pitch and pen. And I used to go over and help her when my grandfather had pitch club because I'd help her, carry the food down the stairs and whatnot she had gotten older. And so when he died, my aunt had died too. And it was kind of funny because in that time frame, I would hear voices downstairs. And I knew that they were there. I could hear the music. I could hear them talking. I didn't see them because I'm not a clairvoyant. I'm a clairsentient. I perceived them. So I got the pictures in my mind's eye. And that's just one of the many instances of having the experience of being in communication with the other side. I tell you this because when I went to go live in the hotel, I was 8. Yes, I know. I just said that I lived with my grandmother when I was about 14. I got, you don't always get along with your parents, so they send you to somebody else because I would say things that psychically didn't, they thought I was crazy, okay? And that happens to a lot of us because we're not totally understood. Oh, Phoebe wants to come up. We'll see how well she does. Anyway, when I was living in the Rancho, I will tell you that there's a huge difference between residual energy, memories, psychic memories and walls and on objects, and hauntings. And I ran those halls. I was in and out of all the different rooms. My dad used us as cheap labor because we were his kids. I did yard work. I used to take TVs and set them up when the old TVs didn't work. It was back in the old days. They didn't have remotes. They had the hand-turning knob. Sometimes the knob would break, and you can't exactly hand the guest a pair of pliers and say, here, we're at the Haney Ranch. So I'd have to go and take TVs in, or I'd have to go fix something in there because I learned how to be a handy person. Well, a handy woman at a young age. I bust tables, so I was in the kitchens, and I was down in the bar area because you had to help clean, and you had to do these different things. So there was a lot of times I was in a lot of different areas of the building. Was it creepy? Absolutely. Some of that stuff was nasty. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about Gallup so you'll get kind of what I'm talking about. When I left Gallup, it was 1982 when I moved over here to Albuquerque. There were 39 bars, I think, for 20,000 people. So there was a lot of drinking going on. And in Gallup, there's a lot of psychic energy there. And when people talk about what the psychic energy, what's going on, there were psychic wars because you had the Navajo tribe on one side and the Zunis, their reservation, and there would be psychic wars over the top because they were two tribes that didn't get along. They had to share space. I mean, they got along, but they didn't get along. It's kind of you have to be there to have that experience. And don't even get me started on the drama within the town itself because there was a lot of alcoholism. If you go back to the records and look, Gallup had a lot of alcohol-related deaths, kind of the largest per capita in those days. largest alcohol-related deaths per capita, largest amount of BD per capita of any town their size, of any town in the country. Gallup, ironically, also had, for many years, I don't know if it's still there, I don't think so, because I think a lot of people have moved, they had more millionaires per capita than any town in the nation back in those days. And a lot of these old Italian families got together, much like many other cultures, and they helped each other because they were all related. So, having grown up in that and having that experience, I can tell you the El Rancho was a centerpiece, like a magnet. There were 3 bars. Not originally. There was only one bar originally. It was called the 49er, and that was what we used to call the downstairs bar, because in the evenings, after the dining room closed, they would open the upstairs bar for more people to come in after the restaurant closed at 9 o'clock. So there was a lot of drinking going on in that place. My dad had remodeled and put the Red Garter Saloon in there. And now this is where some of the creepy things start happening, okay? And why some of the memories give that haunting feeling there. When you have extreme emotion, fear-based emotion in particular, because that draws that low energy, that low entity vibration into your facility. Excuse me. That will draw that energy to the facility. And believe me, the things I saw, I'm not going to give you guys any names. I swear not. I don't care, because y'all probably, if you're from Gallup, you would know these people. I saw people who, I would watch these women, they'd walk in the bar and they were dressed to kill, and they'd come out hanging on some of the creepiest little guys. Ugh. One in particular, she was like 6 foot tall, and she was with this guy who was probably like 5'2". And they came, I was working the desk, I was 15, and he came running down the stairs. There's these 2 stairs that come down that come like this. And he came running down one of the set of stairs naked, buck naked. And she was running after him. And she's like screaming, "Oh, baby, baby, baby." And she was going to get him. And he was like, "Save me." She's crazy. I don't know what she wanted him to do, but, that was kind of one of those things. And that again, that's not real bad. I can tell you that there was another guy who was living there, and he slept with a woman, and he bit her nipples off. Okay? I know. I'm grossing you out now. Everybody cringed. And you're going, why am I telling you this? Well, because this guy's, when he did that, her husband, yes, she was married, came with 3 of his friends and beat this guy so badly that they thought he was dead. Okay? And they took him and they dropped him face first off there's a balcony, like a veranda that runs around the top of that staircase. Okay? Right in front of the front desk. And they told the desk clerk, if you tell anybody, oh, here's Phoebe, she has to be in the limelight too. They told the desk clerk, if you tell anyone, we will come for you. Okay? That's some of that negative energy. Well, I can tell you that there were other instances. There was a murder, admittedly. I guess I had to have it clarified. I thought it was a guy who had been flirting with the bartender, but evidently it was the bartender who there was some flirting going on, and as he came out of the Red Garter, he was murdered. He was shot. So there was a death there. There was another death that had, back in the 40s, it was a bellhop killed another bellhop. There was a cult, and you can Google this in the Gallup Independent. It was a cult that was there they broke up the cult. The cult worked for my dad. They rented the restaurant from us, but they also worked as desk clerks and whatnot. It was, Gallup was Gallup, and you minded your own business, but this cult was there. And there was an FBI agent that was murdered right outside the hotel by being run over by a car. These were just some of the things that happened in there. There was so many, there was gambling. When my dad took it over, there was a whorehouse on the 3rd floor, and there were strippers in the bar. Okay, didn't have a good reputation. It was pretty wild, and it was pretty intense for an 8-year-old. Well, I can tell you my psychic senses, my medium skills were already developed. I have never once experienced a haunting there. Now let's talk about a haunting. Does that mean that spirit doesn't come through there? No, absolutely not. A haunting is when you have some residual energy from a spirit. It is a spirit that is trapped, and they're angry, and they're trying desperately to make life miserable for people. It's not a pleasant experience. Now, there's astral bodies that come into play too, and those are different than hauntings. Hauntings are they're really intense. People get scratched, people get attacked. Having lived there, you would think that I would have been attacked because I was a kid and vulnerable. I was also able to sense spirit being in the facility. That doesn't mean that there wasn't energy there of spirits walking around. But that's not a haunting, and it's not scary, and they're just kind of passing through, okay? Because spirit does that. Now, an astral haunting, if you will, or an astral experience is when the astral body hasn't burned up. When we die, we have our 5 bodies. We have our light, that's our true self. Then we have the soul, that's like it kind of looks like this. See, I'm so good. I'm going to draw y'all a picture. So you have your light. I'm going to hope you guys can see this. And then around that is your soul. Looks like a record player. See that? I know you don't need to. Right there. I can't. Yeah, I hate these things. I'm backwards. There. Anyway, it looks like a cell. Okay? So the light that's our true self is surrounded by our soul that holds the record of who we are. That's linked to the Akashic record, or our book of life, which is if you looked at it, it's like a thread that goes from our soul through the Akashic records to the God source, or creative source, or true source, whatever you want to call it. When that energy is exchanged, it goes through and it writes it in the book, and it's experienced by the God source. Okay, and this is why they say you can't hide anything. God knows what you're going to do beforehand, because it's all done like thought, nanoseconds. And we can get into that conversation on another day, but that soul holds us. And then surrounding that is our etheric body. Our etheric body is like when we transition, we drop the physical form and the astral body. The etheric protects the soul and the light, and that's what gives us the images that we get when we're perceiving or we're actually seeing. If you're clairvoyant, the person, like they're standing there looking at you. Okay, with that being said, the etheric body, a lot of people go, wow, because that's our angels. Okay. And that's, again, another conversation. If you ever want to hear about angels, we can talk about that. Just let me know. But around the etheric body is the astral body. Okay, it's kind of our buffer between the physical form, slows our vibration down, so that we can hold space in our physical body. So at night, when we go to sleep, we come out, silver cord, and we go out and we go to the astral, or we kind of hang out in the prana and rejuvenate our spiritual self. And I'm putting this all kind of simplistically in a nutshell. And what happens is that astral body, when we pass away, okay, the astral body doesn't necessarily dissipate just because we transition. So the astral body doesn't have a brain, but it has a memory. So it will do things like go down and cook the stove. You'll say, oh, you know, I see this little old lady. She's always baking biscuits. Or my son, when he worked over at the Indian Cultural Center, no, it was the Hispanic Cultural Center, sorry, here in town, he said, Mom, you know, there's this guy that keeps walking through. He walks through. I was trying to stop him, and I said, if he didn't pay attention to you and he's doing it every night, this is his astral body just repeating the routine that he lived. And my son did have his third eye open, and he was very cognizant about what was going on. So he really, you know, when you see something like that, that's not a haunting. That's just the astral body doing its routine. And it will dissipate over time. Now, let's go back to hauntings, because, you know, I like this. This is my, oops, hang on. This is what happens, and this is my opinion. I'm going to qualify this before I get in trouble with any of these TV shows that say there's haunting. When we pass away, a haunting can happen because something traumatic happened to that person, either the way they died or as they were dying. I'm going to give you a little personal example. When my son passed away, and I might cry, but when he passed away, I called the one woman I knew he would go to. At the time, I knew who he would call, he would go to. And so I called her and I said, hey, if you hear anything in the airways, because I knew I was too screwed up. He would have, I felt him choose to leave. And grief will shut you down on that level. So I called up my girlfriend, and she said, you know what, he did come by. This was a few days later. He said he wanted you to know that when he was mostly out of his body when his physical form died. Why is that important? Well, if you're walking down the street, now Gallup there's some really intense stories about Gallup in and of itself. There was a bar nicknamed the Bucket of Blood back in the around 1911, 1912, where A.T. Hannett, who was the 11th governor of New Mexico, he tells the story in his autobiography. He walked in to this bar to have a drink, and this guy walked in and shot the guy standing next to him. Well, this guy didn't know it was coming. It was just, you know, and he was gone. That's a traumatic type of death, okay? So going back to that bartender, you know, that bartender was not a native New Mexican. He didn't have family there. So I doubt that he got trapped there for long. I would have felt him. But he did die traumatically. So oftentimes with a traumatic death, murders or intense illness, anger, when you're dying, those things will create the energy for that entity to haunt. They're confused. They're trying to get noticed. And the longer that they stick around, the less light they're seeing. So the more the haunting takes place. That doesn't mean that spirit isn't always around us. For example, you know, people have died around this world for eons. Okay? It's not like the Holocaust where people were trapped and they didn't know what they were doing. And they died and they were stuck there in that energy. When they die, if they're confused, if they're angry, if they're not usually in pain, pain does not usually trap them. But horrific instances, an unfinished business, leaving a loved one behind, not ready to go, was unsure that they were going, can trap them here. And the longer they stay, the more traumatic it'll be. There was a person's house that I went to go clear. She had a man who was haunting her house, per se. He was pissed because she had a table, and I don't know what it was about the table. He didn't like the way it was set, and it was constantly being moved. So instead of it being set this way, he moved it that way, just like, meh. And so she was at odds with this, and she thought, is he going to hurt me? Well, he had lived in that house for many years, so no, he wasn't hurting her, but he was moving the table. But it scares us. So the fact that things get moved doesn't necessarily denote a haunting. A haunting is when there's a deliberate action of trying to harm someone repeatedly. We call hauntings the whole thing, like moving the table, that's a haunting. I think that's just them saying, hey, you know what? This was my house and I don't like the way you set that table up. Because that's what that guy did. So when we came to terms with it, the guy moved on. But he was going back and forth between spirit and the house. He wasn't stuck there. So that's my opinion. That's my story on the El Rancho. I'd love to hear some of your guys' stories about Gallup, if you have any. Because Gallup is really a, you know what, I just have to say that, you know, when you're from Gallup, there's this, it's kind of like that unique club. You have to have lived there, been there, and done that, or known people who are there, because we're a breed all on our own. And a lot of very spiritual people come out of Gallup. So yeah, that's my story on hauntings and my opinion for what it's worth. I hope that is of entertainment to you all. I wish you all a good day. I am going to let you go now. And I think that if you got any questions or anything, post them at the bottom of the video and I'll be back on later and check. But my heart to all of yours. This was great fun, and I'll see you next Friday. Bye now. Mwah.